Hello, I'm Landis. Welcome to my studio. Hey, welcome to our YouTube channel. This episode, Timothy is going to explain casting a sterling silver bar. It's the first step in making on our finger picks. And remember to subscribe, like us on Facebook, and visit our website at landispicks.com.
All right, we're going to get this ready to cast. We've got plenty of temperature. We're going to be pouring into this. It's just called a book mold, and just kind of clean it out a little bit here first. And again, similar to really anytime you're casting, you want to make sure there's no condensation, any water, any liquid around anywhere. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to hit it with the propane torch and warm it up and get it ready for casting. And you should actually be able to see the condensation come and then disappear, and we'll start there. You can see it changing color, that's the condensation. Now you see it going away. And we refer to that as sweating the mold, because that condensation can actually be explosive. When we're doing production runs, you only have to do that right when you start, because once we cast material in there, it's going to be super hot. So if we're doing production runs and doing multiple pours throughout the morning, throughout the day, then it's unnecessary to keep sweating the mold. It'll stay plenty warm. So I've got a couple spacers here I use. I've got different spacers depending on what thickness of bar I'm going to use. In this case, these are just to open up the mold a little bit in order to get a thicker bar to work with. And then I've got just a little washer that I've cut to the dimensions that I need for the strip that we're making. And it's just a quick means of determining the width of the piece without having to get out, measure every single time that I put it back together. Now I just have to, kind of eyeball it and get it in. Again, very low tech. Get those spacers where we need them. And now we'll coat the die. Again, I use the acetylene. I just use straight acetylene, no oxygen. And you can people use different things. Mold release, tallow, Vaseline works pretty good. It's a little flammable. I have found the carbon deposit from the acetylene to be super heavy and thick and slippery. WD-40 makes a graphite spray mold, or a graphite spray, excuse me. And if you spray that on the mold, it works really well. If you don't have acetylene, or you're doing only very few of these melts. It's just this, we have a big bottle, so it'll last us a long time. But I super recommend that graphite spray from WD-40 if you're only doing some smaller molds. And we're just going to line that up. Get a close up of this over here. I'm using just welder's clamps, just adjustable vice grip C-clamps, as opposed to the threaded style, just much quicker. I want to always make sure that it's nice and tight on the bottom, because you will get spill out. And you want these clamps just as tight as you personally can manage. I'm going to go one on each side. to dust the top again, just to make sure that my entrance is nice and slippery. And then I've got it just in a baker's tray, you know, an oven tray. I just get the biggest one I found, and you can see in there what I've done. It could probably use a little cleaning and dusting now, but I'll actually coat the entire tray with that acetylene as well. That way anything that spills doesn't get stuck on that steel or anything. It'll puddle up and not stick to that tray. Good to keep that nice and heavy and thick, because any material that sticks to that steel, it becomes bonded and has to be refined and whatnot. So just a kind of a simple little tip if you're doing it at home. A lot of your jewelers just find you a nice big metal tray and coat it. Again, same thing, you could also coat that with Vaseline and it'll keep your material from sticking to the steel. Other than that, probably ready to go. Don't forget your safety glasses. I almost did. Some of you may prefer a face shield if you don't have the experience you need to be an idiot. But these glasses will work. The last thing you want is a splash of hot silver in the face. Okay. Now the fun part. We're going to try and get this into the mold as quickly as possible. This mold is not totally up to temperature. When I'm in a production run, as the mold gets hotter, I'll actually slow down how fast I pour it because the cooling, when it's nice and hot, it cools at different rates. Right now, it's the mold is not like up to production temp, so I'm actually going to want to try and get the silver in there as quickly as possible because it's going to cool really quickly as it goes into that mold. I will slow down as I'm watching when I get to the top, because there's a cavity, a cooling cavity that occurs when you're casting, and as you slow down towards the top, you're able to reduce the openness of that cavity. You can get some more density there towards the top, because I want to get as much usable material out of this strip as possible. If I go too slow, you'll get super ragged edges, you'll get all kinds of trouble. So we're going to try and get in mold as quickly as possible in this first cast. And I can tell that it's already hard enough to kind of do this awkwardly so you can keep seeing it, but there's a cast bar. Still a little warm. Shocker, right? There we go. Nice big bar of sterling. So just gonna, when it comes out of there, you got this flashing from the mold where it doesn't seep totally. I didn't quite get those spacers lined up either. You see that's kind of neat looking. That won't affect what we're doing. But we just take a shear and clean up all the flashing that we can. And all these scraps, you know, you save them and we just throw them back in. That's one of the cool things about manufacturing and fabricating with precious metals, is that we can just recycle everything. So, pretty cool. I just got a heavy-duty Scotch-Brite wheel on here. You know, you can use a wire wheel. You can do it by hand, sandpaper, Scotch-Brite, whatever. But what we're going to do is we're going to clean this bar up before we run it through the rolling mill, so that all of this schmutz, that's a technical term, that's on the surface here doesn't transfer over to our rolls. We want to make sure this is just as clean as we can get it. I could probably do a better job of collecting the material that comes off here. I mean, you can see there's some glitter here, which is obviously silver, but well, Maybe that's a future project. Build a housing around this thing and catch all that material. Somebody's gonna notice this and be shocked, but that won't be the last thing you're shocked about. Put my mask on here. Man, when the pandemic started, I had to go buy masks and couldn't find any anywhere. I don't know if anybody else had that same experience. And then I had to buy some. I was working on my house doing drywall, and I couldn't find any mask replacements for my drywall mask, and it was driving me nuts. Of course, now in hindsight, people were right to be buying masks. But when it first started, I mean, I know you all remember it was like, dude, you could not find masks anywhere, and it was such a pain. It was like, no, I'm doing drywall. I need. Okay, everybody needs them now, but anyway. So this wheel is going to clean all that off. I'm actually going to kind of take there's some of these sharp edges and stuff, but I'll just run it through there. You'll be able to see that. You can see the difference there. So on fine silver, I don't need to be as aggressive. I can use a real fine Scotch-Brite, or even just, if the casting is good enough, I can just use like some acetone in a paper towel, because the material comes out so fresh and clean. But sterling, with the impurities in it, or the alloy I should say, it creates a really, the surface has a lot going on. In larger production, in scalable methods, there's actually machines that they use. In some cases, they'll use what amounts to like a surface grinder, or like a planer from a wood shop, and they'll actually remove a top layer from your sterling or your Britannia or some of the coining metals. I've even run what's referred to as a scalper, and it's the same thing, again, similar to like a planer in a wood shop, and it's actually full metal mill blades, and they actually run that across the surface of the sterling in order to remove that top layer, because that top layer is full of some strange stuff in sterling. It never is completely amalgamized on the surface. Those impurities, as it's cooling and everything, kind of come out. So in order to get rid of all the pock marks and make rolling cleaner and more effective, it's actually good to remove that top layer. Again, for what we're doing and the quality control we have in the end product, we can just get away with this. It's an extremely heavy-duty Scotch-Brite. This is like, you don't want to put your hand into that thing while it's running, but it's effective for what we're doing.